And we move right on to the Council Group Quarterly Report, which we've obviously had previously, but this is for Tracy, Francis and Kevin. And we have Francis, we have Kevin. I'll move this item and Desley will second it, so welcome again, Francis.
Good morning, Chair, Mr. Mayor and councillors. You'll recall that at the during the finalisation of the annual report, this was completed in confidential because of our requirements around the listed bonds on the NZX, the New Zealand Stock Exchange. And so today is the opportunity for us to look at the performance of the CCOs, the council parent, as well as the group for the year ended 30 June 2018. Here we go. So, based on the recommendations of the Audit and Risk Committee and the Finance and Performance Committee, the governing body adopted the annual report on the 27th of September 2018. This report covers and presents the regular quarterly performance of the group for the year. And as I mentioned, the Auckland Council parent as well as the council controlled organisations will report in their individual performance later on in this meeting. Sorry, not good at working this. Here we go. Thank you. Now, as we discussed at both the Finance and Performance Committee and at the governing body, for the group, we've had an operating surplus before gains and losses of 122 million, which is better than budget, and 320 million better than last year. This, from our perspective, is a good, solid operating result. Vested assets were up by 370 million. Depreciation costs were down by 60 million. That was principally at Auckland Transport. We had an increase in weather tightness provisions of 83 million. And that's because we are required to prudently cover future expected claims, and we needed to increase that provision based on actuarial advice that we received. And finally, there was, following the adoption of the annual plan, there was, once the CRL agreements were finalised, we had to change the accounting treatment that was expected, and instead of it going as revenue through the P&L, it went through the balance sheet. So hence we had that other difference. But overall, a good result. Capital investment. As we mentioned, the group invested $1.67 billion worth of expenditure in expanding and in renewing the community assets and the infrastructure assets. That excludes our contribution to the CRL, and that was the highest we've ever spent as a group since amalgamation. Net debt only increased by 253 million, which was about 100 million less than budgeted. But also, one of the things that I mentioned previously is that there's a strong in the cash flow, more than $1.1 billion worth of cash flow was used to finance that 1.6 billion worth of investments. So we're relying more and more on our internally generated operational results to fund the capital investment. So when the committee discusses with the CCOs, we've just got two items that we thought we would highlight to you, TICA performance results that the committee may wish to explore. The first one is the capital expenditure. For the group, it was about 269 million behind budget, and two CCOs that were particularly behind was Regional Facilities Auckland, who delivered about 79% of their budgeted expenditure, and Panuku, who delivered 19%. And the question really is about what plans do they have in place to improve delivery. And the final one is that Regional Facilities performance is behind budget, and again, it might be something to consider as to what plans they have to meet budgets for the current year. So to conclude, this annual report we believe reflects a positive operating result, and the financial management of the organisation continues to, in our minds, be prudent. So happy to take any questions.
I think the Mayor might have a question on capitalisation of labour.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you very much, Francis, and I think it is a positive report. One of the surprising aspects of the report was that the expenditure on staffing was down, which I think is, I can't remember a time when staffing went down, particularly while the city was growing by close to 40,000. But there was some debate through the media about capitalisation of staff costs, as to suggest that somehow we were hiding this cost and this was an unusual procedure. Can you please confirm to me that capitalisation of staff costs has always been done, not only by public sector but also private sector organisations, that it is a standard accounting practice, and that there has never been any attempt to hide that? But on top of all of that, the capitalised staff costs is also down, I think, 10% over the last 4 years. So the trend has been a positive one.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, no, exactly right, Mr. Mayor. So capitalised staff costs are inherently different by nature. Through accounting standards, which is driven by legislation, on our profit and loss or statement of comprehensive income statements, they must only show the operational costs. Look, in no ways have been hidden. Costs involved in the creation of assets are always shown as part of our capital expenditure. The numbers are shown in there. Look, by way of example, if, for instance, we have a stormwater project creating an asset, we're putting pipes in the ground, one of the ways you can manage that project is to have a resource to project manage it, to manage the contracts. You can do that through hiring an external person to do that, or you could actually hire an employee to do that. If you hire an employee, their costs go to that capital project. So in no way is it hidden, it's actually just part of the capital costs as opposed to the operational costs which are shown on our statements. Yes.
So just to follow up, the comment that we were running accounts that Enron would have been proud of wouldn't be upheld by any auditor in any part of this country at all?
No.
That's just a nonsense.
Look, I agree with the comment there. As you know, we had a unmodified on the financials for our audit, as we usually do.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Francis, the vested assets up 370 million. What is the total of vested assets over the past year? I've been trying to dig that out for 3 days and I've just missed it, obviously.
Sorry, just
572 for group.
572 for group.
572.
Yep.
And that is counted as income, yes?
That is correct,
Which
but
seems,
it is non-cash.
yeah, seems, it's valued, it seems bizarre. It's not cash, it's an accounting practice.
Accounting practice, absolutely. We have to follow international public sector accounting standards, and they require that to be shown as revenue. That is why we also provide in our primary financial statements the statement of cash flows, because that actually shows you the cash.
Movements, yes.
And as I mentioned there, this year we had a positive cash inflow of 1.1 billion, which is a strong result, and that's been increasing over the years. That's particularly as we're funding more and more depreciation.
That's my next question.
That's exactly what, and depreciation is a non-cash item, but because we fund it, it actually results in us getting in more cash, which allows us to better fund our huge capital program rather than just on borrowings.
So that's always been an interesting part, I think, for the public, Mr. Chair, to understand that, we borrow to build assets, but not all of it, because some of it is funded through the capital program. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Francis, we actually 100% appreciation is reached by 2025 year?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct.
That would have a massive problem, a massive downward push on our debt loadings, which is good.
Councillor Darby.
Oh, that was quick. Thank you. Just in terms of, and Chair, I think you might have this report coming. There is a unique report on weather tightness. We did discuss this, I think, 3 months ago about wanting to dig deeper into the weather tightness risk. Is that report coming?
I'm happy to respond. So through the Chair, and at next week's Finance Performance Committee, we will share forward work program for the year. That'll include some highlights in the next coming months, and we are currently working on a fairly comprehensive workshop for weather tightness this side of Christmas. We're hoping that can be in November.
Okay, look, thank you for that.
Yep.
My second line of inquiry is just around FTEs and consultants. So it's, for me, I'm not taken by just FTE numbers. I really, because we all know that you can not engage an FTE on the staff and then just, you can have those services delivered by consultants. So we really need to read both. And I guess I'm looking at, for the outsourcing of resource consents and maintenance functions, a variance to budget of 15 million negative. That's quite considerable. And if you looked at an FTE of $100,000 salary, that's 150 FTEs equivalent. So can we, in the future, sort of get an idea of FTEs and FTE equivalents on consulting services? Because there's some crossovers between being on staff and being off staff consulting. Is that understood anywhere? Because I think we're a little bit just myopic on we're doing well because we've got a handle on FTEs, but I'm much more interested in understanding the full package.
Yeah, look, through the Chair, look, definitely, it's definitely understood by the business. Penny Pritchett has been here talking about the notion of trying to build up that base foundation of staff to deliver consenting, but we accept the fact that if we do want to deal with the consent numbers which are picking up as we speak, that you do need to provide resources to process those. So that's where they are using external resources instead of staff as they try the recruitment drive to bring staff on board. There is a pricing differential between those two. The other comment I make, income versus expenditure, especially in consenting area, when consent numbers are picking up, what you tend to find is you're doing the work on the consents now, but the revenue may flow later. So there can be a timing differential there as well.
Yeah. So I understand the need for them, and I understand why you don't necessarily hire, because that consent load might drop off the other side.
Yes.
Let's hope it doesn't. And then you're paying for your staff and they're twiddling thumbs.
Yes.
I totally get that. Sure. Totally get that. But I guess what I'm aiming for here is understanding FTEs and FTE equivalents that are in the consultants bundle.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Well, look, we can have a look at how easy it is to quantify them as equivalent FTEs. It's through professional services or outsourced works. We'll see if we can actually quantify that for future. Yeah. How easy that will be to do. Yeah. Yes. I understand your point there.
But I think the important thing is that we couldn't get the staff for those, so we had no option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay. As
totally
long as
get
that's
that.
clear.
Yep.
Yeah. We weren't trying to change anything.
Oh, huge challenge.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cooper.
Sorry, so just following on from that, so is The use of outsourcing, that's traded off against the money we didn't spend on staff we had. So is that the net difference, or is there another side of the balance sheet where it shows we haven't spent that money?
No, generally, that is an offset.
On employment?
It's all
Generally, it's an offset between those two.
But so that's
Yep.
the net difference?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yep.
All right, any further questions? Councillor Simpson, any questions? No?
I know the answers to most of my questions, Councillor. But I will
Let's
have
not
a
make a
comment.
theatre.
I don't need to make a theatre, but I will make some comments.
Thank you. Good to see you in red today.
That's pink. Pink.
I'm sure
So we're
it's,
going for comments. Councillor Simpson.
Oh, gosh. Okay, that might be the blush, I'm sure, the blush. You know, I want to start by saying, in some respects, I'm a little bit flummoxed by your report, you know, and I say this because we've had a very good go at the annual report in confidence. And so in some ways I congratulate you by sort of not highlighting the positives and really going for the negatives in some respects. And I think that's showing a great deal of openness and transparency. What I'm confused about is sometimes that in confidence we get to share and expand upon all the good news, and yet in public you highlight all the bad news. And I think that's a shame. I will just target a couple of things which tend to be quite well picked up publicly. One is debt, you know, and the debt figures are without doubt eye-wateringly large for most people, right? You know, they are. And there's always negativity when your debt goes up. Yes, it's increased, but it needs to be put into context of the significant increase in capital investment. But what's more important to me is the debt apportionment. So the last 10-year budget had debt funding at 24% of our investment program of 18.7 billion. This report shows that our debt has grown by only 14% of our capex investment. So arguably you could say that whilst our debt has gone up, the debt ratio is a lot lower. And most importantly, the debt was below budget, you know? So I just hope that people don't always perceive an increase of debt as being a bad thing, because it's not necessarily. So I want to do that. The other thing on staff, which is another one that comes up all the time, if you have a look at point 17, Ports of Auckland bought 2 new companies. Of course they came with new staff. That's going to be over budget, right? The Transport and RFA, we gave Maritime Museum, this committee gave RFA Maritime Museum, which came with extra staff. Of course you were going to be, this was this decision of this committee, right? Auckland Transport, we agreed that they would have more safety officers on trains. So of course that was over budget. So although there is stuff over budget, we've all gone through the process around staff to take it to that point. So I suppose in conclusion, you know, we know full well, although I'm sure it won't be reported, that actually we're not doing that badly. I mean, parent better than group, sure, but overall, look, you know, congratulations team. It isn't a bad job by any means of the imagination. I just wish I could help you write your report a little bit more positively, because you've highlighted all the bad stuff. And I just think you should highlight some of the good stuff a bit more. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Right, well, there's no one else that wishes to comment, so we've got that. We have a mover and a seconder, and myself and Councillor Simpson, so we'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? No, thank you very much. Right.